Welcome, everybody, to the, sixth, seventh, eighth edition of the TMO podcast. At this point, I've completely lost track, but I'm Jace Eustace, joined here by my co-host, by my colleague, Jared Huff. Jared, how's it going, man?
Not too bad, other than the loss the Bears just suffered. My Sunday is going pretty well for the most part, I would say.
Oh, yeah, both of us being Bears fans, that's something we've come pretty accustomed to, I will say, unfortunately, but we got to get into what's going on in the NBA because there's no shortage of headlines going around. And the first one that came out was back at the beginning of this week, and we're now finally getting the chance to talk about it. But it was announced that the iconic home of the Lakers and the Clippers will now be changing its name from the Staples Center to the Crypto.com Arena. And Jared, I know this has been all over social media. Everybody's giving their opinion on it. But what do you make of this change coming to the league, one of the league's most favorite venues?
I have to say, there's been a trend growing in sports the last 5 years, I'd say, where all these contracts, these long-term contracts are coming up for stadium and arena and ballpark sponsorships. And you see like iconic names, even though like they're still sponsored, like Miller Park, the Pepsi Center, Staples Center, all these teams or all these stadiums. Then the name that they adopt after that is like awful.
I
like
agree.
The iconic Miller Park. I'm sure you've probably driven through Milwaukee 100 times. Just living in close proximity, being Illinois and Wisconsin. But you'd see like the nice Miller logo. Yeah, it's a sponsor, but at the same time, Miller's a last name, so it could like be for like a person. So it just sounded nice.
Yeah.
And then they take it away, and it's now American Family Insurance Field, or there's Guaranteed Rate Field with the White Sox. Yeah. There's Pepsi Center is now Ball Arena. What else? So now you have the iconic Staples Center, which yes, it's Staples. It's a company that probably should have gone out of business like 10 years ago, just based on the way things happen. But you kind of, since Staples itself as a company has been so irrelevant, you kind of forgot what the name meant. It's Staples. It's the Staples Center. It's been that way since 1999. My first cognitive memory of it's always been Staples Center.
Yeah.
And then you go to naming it Crypto.com. What is it? Arena?
Crypto.com Arena. Yeah.
That is like the third dumbest name in all of sports. Can we just do this for the fans or for the city? Can we pick our partnerships with the name in mind? Like that, there are just so many ugly names on these historic buildings. And I don't know. I think Kobe Bryant's rolling in his grave just hearing that name right now. It's awful.
Yeah.
And even to make it even funnier, Westbrook in an interview called it Crip Arena or something like that.
Yeah, he didn't even know what was going on. He plays for the team, but yeah, no,
this was a better name actually.
Yeah, this was surprising, and to me, it wasn't just because of the price tag that was attached to it. I mean, $700 million for naming rights. I obviously see why the Bus family decided to make that move. I mean, that's no small amount of change for just a name on the top of a building. And I believe, just from a little research I did, I believe it's second only to the Scotiabank Arena, which is home of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Another bad name.
That was $800 million. So I believe I could be entirely wrong, so don't quote me on it, but it could be the second, highest price tag on a renaming of a building. But, the Staples Center, this name change, it's going to be strange. And it's going to be strange when you start hearing the broadcast teams, on TNT, ESPN, all the guys on the mainstream games when the Lakers and the Clippers are playing have to say, broadcasting live from Los Angeles from the Crypto.com Arena. It's not going to sound right. It
doesn't roll off the tongue.
It's the Staples Center. And I know I know money drives everything. I know Staples itself as a company is kind of irrelevant at this point, but it should almost just be grandfathered in. Like it's the Staples Center and that's what it is. And I understand everything's got a price tag, but I just think it's going to be kind of like the Sears Tower in Chicago, how most people from the area.
Exactly what I said.
It's still going to be the Sears Tower, even though the name has changed, I believe, like 3 times. And I don't even know what it currently is called right now. But it's hard to change around this country and sports in general. It's hard to change what people become used to. People are still going to refer to it as the Staples Center. They're going to go to games that they say at the Staples Center. And it's just, and you mentioned it there. And one of the things that especially our generation is going to remember, Kobe played at the Staples Center. Like that's
Exactly.
Kobe's home. He played at the Staples Center, and all the greats that have traveled through that, that center. And even though they didn't play when it was called the Staples Center, just kind of the aura that the Lakers and the Clippers, but specifically the Lakers have, and all the big names that they've gotten, man, it's just Staples Center. I mean, it speaks for itself. And the last note that I kind of put, and it was to your point of how bad it sounds. Could we just call it Crypto Arena? Like it sounds better. I mean, it's not good, but it's better than crypto.com arena.
Definitely.
Like I get it. That's what they are. They're crypto.com, but crypto arena might have some more people that are saying, hey, this might be okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. Oh man. But we don't make the decisions, and the change has been made for $700 million, and we don't have the money to change that. So moving right along from LeBron James's home stadium to the man himself, and more specifically, the recent beef between him and Boston Celtics Enes Kanter. The Lakers and Celtics played a few days ago as Kanter used the opportunity to wear custom shoes that were taking shots at LeBron's comments in 2009 around the protests in Hong Kong. His shoes also showed an individual with a likeness to the king getting crowned by the Chinese president. Kanter tweeted out images of his shoes with the caption, quote, "Money over morals for the king. Sad and disgusting how these athletes pretend they care about social justice. They really do shut up and dribble when Big Boss says so. Did you educate yourself about the slave labor that made your shoes, or is that not part of your research?" Jarrett, what is going on here?
In my bit of research, I can't really find too much that substantiates Kanter's claims that Nike's using cheap labor to build the shoes at their factories and stuff like that. Nike earlier in the year released a statement saying basically that they reviewed all of their manufacturers and their partners and everything like that when it comes to working in China to make sure that they weren't involved with some of these rumored slave labor camps when like some of these early reports came out. And Nike claims to confirm that they don't have any ties to any of those rumors. But at the same time, I think Kanter is bringing up some good points when it comes to the social justice aspect of it. I mean, Nike does a lot when it comes to talking about social justice in America, and it's great, and it's done wonders, I think, in the sporting world. But when it comes to dealing with China, China is a major, major, major black hole when it comes to human rights. I mean, the people there are so censored. I mean, if one NBA player on any team says a word, even if the team doesn't officially stand by what that player says, that player, the team gets basically blacklisted from being broadcast in China. It's ridiculous. And the Celtics are one of those teams, based on Kanter's words. Same thing happened with the Rockets with Daryl Morey. Basically, anyone that says something they don't like, China gets rid of them. Essentially, like you'll never see anything about them. So it would be a major move if Nike did stand up, and because they have a lot of weight in China, if they did stand up and say, like, just speak out, because I mean, Kanter's been trying to draw light to the issues with Tibet and Taiwan and Beijing, or I'm sorry, not Beijing, Hong Kong and all those territories and countries basically fighting for their independence from China.
Yeah, see, I was glad to see that your response kind of focused around the Nike aspect of it, because I focused my response a little bit more on the actual just LeBron, because to me it seemed like he took an unnecessary shot at LeBron for comments that LeBron even admitted himself that he was a little uneducated on, and actually came back and apologized for his comments, and the world seemed to have moved on. I know when this kind of come up, people were like, did something else happen, or are we just bringing this up from a few years ago? Because I know it's the first thing I thought about. Obviously everybody heard LeBron's comments back when it came out, but I just think taking this shot to call out LeBron when he has been, with few exceptions, one of the most outspoken superstar athletes on social justice issues we've ever seen. I mean, obviously there's Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There's always these exceptions, Bill Russell, who's all those guys who are very outspoken as athletes. But LeBron is not a guy that stays quiet through things. And sometimes it's to his detriment. A lot of the times his critics will say that he speaks out too much, like when he did back with Hong Kong, when he said some things when he wasn't fully educated on it. But I just hate to see this with Kanter, because I know Kanter's heart is in the right place. And he's shown time and time again, obviously, social justice issues, especially in his home country, really ring home with him. And he fights and he puts in the work and he walks the walk. But to try to turn this into a sort of contest where it's like, I do more than what you do. And I hate to see this get ugly, because I think when it comes to social justice issues, it doesn't have to be, I'm doing more than you. It should be, we're all on the same page. We're all speaking out against, things that we perceive as being right. And I just saw this as kind of an unnecessary shot at LeBron and almost like a headline grabbing move. And I didn't think that it in any way pushed Kanter's points to a level that will get people talking about his actual points and gets people talking about exactly this, just the beef between him and LeBron.
I wonder if what Kanter is trying to achieve, though, is maybe trying to get LeBron to talk about it, because really LeBron hasn't really had a position on this, along with just several figures across the NBA. And I think a lot of that is because of the NBA's ties with China. I mean, in several cases, some of those strings are kind of frayed and broken. But I do think that if you're going to talk about social justice here, you should probably talk about social justice everywhere. So I do think Nike and LeBron and just any other faces around the league should look more into this and probably become a little more educated on it, because they have partners in this country, and it's just, I don't know, sometimes it kind of rings hollow to me when you're talking about other issues, but then there's issues in China and all these people that are being exploited, these people that are being persecuted, being censored and stuff like that. And there's nothing they can do about it because their government just has a government that, in my mind, probably isn't too legitimate, has a stranglehold on them. And this will this will probably get us banned in China, but that's okay. I don't really care.
Yeah, see, like the thing to me, it really, the shoes itself I can kind of get over, but it was the comments kind of after the game, the post that Kanter made that I hope is not a direct shot at LeBron. He doesn't directly name him, but obviously the shoes do, talking about the king and things like that. But I hope that the quote, sad and disgusting how these athletes pretend that they care about social justice. They really do shut up and dribble when Big Boss says so. And if that's an accusation at LeBron, that he just pretends to care about social justice issues just because, it grabs headlines. If anything, if I could play devil's advocate, and I can make the argument, LeBron would be better off and have more fans if he never spoke out about any sort of social justice issues. That's never been his problem. If he's made mistakes, and he has, as far as public relations, he's made some comments and things like that. He's always one to go back and apologize, and nobody's going to be perfect. But I think to pick someone just out of a line to kind of make an example of that Kanter did, I feel like there's a lot more superstars in the league that stay quiet on social justice issues that would be better for him to kind of, poke the bear with than LeBron. I mean, I'm just thinking, not to, put anybody on the spot, but I just think, Steph Curry, we never hear him talking about anything. Steph Curry is known worldwide, Giannis Antetokounmpo, guys like that, Kevin Durant, who all we talk about him is his Twitter accounts and his sometimes fake Twitter accounts. But it seems like, they want LeBron to speak more, criticize him for speaking more. And now Kanter's using this opportunity to try to get more superstars to speak, which is okay. The message is good. I just think he picked the wrong guy to kind of prove this point on.
I have two more things on this. My first one is kind of in defense of LeBron. LeBron did say, though, when Kanter passed him in the hallway and had a chance to talk to him, Kanter didn't say anything. So LeBron's like, you could have said something to me. We could have talked about it.
And I'm sure they would have sat down and had a great conversation. Like LeBron, it seems like that's he would have been all for that. At least the comments that he said. Yeah.
But in response to your take on who Kanter could have gone for, I don't think there is a better athlete that you could single out in terms of this case. I mean, LeBron is basically 1B when it comes to having a place as a player at Nike, with Michael Jordan being the only one above him. So I think, and I don't really know of Under Armour's ties to China with Steph Curry and stuff like that. I'm not too familiar. But I think with Nike, which it's very well known that Nike has a lot of equity in China.
Yeah.
And LeBron is probably the most famous active athlete on the planet right now. aside from soccer. But in my mind, I don't get I'm not a soccer fan, so I don't really get how tangible the like Ronaldo or all those guys are. But to me, LeBron's the most famous player or athlete on the planet. And I think like he probably would carry the most weight in anything that would have to do with, I mean, he's the face of the NBA. He's the face of Nike actively. And he's probably, aside from Steph Curry, the most popular player in China, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I wouldn't say our disagreement, but our disconnect here is I took this more as a shot across the bow for LeBron, but mostly also other superstars in the league. And I think you took it also as a big shot towards Nike. And I guess I just didn't really look at it that I kind of took a different approach at that. But I think both of them are very valid, where obviously LeBron has huge ties to Nike. Like you said, the 1B, 1A, one that they are Nike essentially, have been their entire career. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation. I'm interested to see if in the next coming weeks or so, if we hear anything more about this. I wouldn't be surprised if a week from now we heard about, some Zoom meeting or something where LeBron sat down with his guys and Kanter sat down with his guys, and they're, forming an initiative, because that just seems like that might be the outcome. And I think Kanter would welcome that. I think LeBron would welcome that. I think they both have their hearts in the right place, 9 times out of 10, or if not more. And I think they both want to affect change. And I think it's just a little disconnect, a little call out, but I think overall good things would probably come from this. But moving on from there, we're a couple superstars, or I wouldn't say superstars, the Enes Kanter, but a couple good players out there calling each other out. I want to move on to the Phoenix Suns, who started this season 1-3, and we were calling them out on our second podcast saying like, oh, we might've been wrong about the Suns. What's going on with the Suns? Since then, they've turned everything around and they've done it very quickly. They've now rattled off 11 straight victories to find themselves behind only the Warriors in the Western Conference. So Jared, what do you make of this run by Phoenix?
Well, to me, this run proves that this team does not take the foot off the gas. I mean, it's very hard, especially early on in the season, I feel like, to rattle off a win streak like this because, I mean, you got some new players that come in on the teams. You're facing some tough teams early. Some players are just getting back in their groove, stuff like that. So it's been a very encouraging sight to see the Suns back on track. They're already some of the cream of the crop in the West, a conference that historically is really tough and wide open at all times. The thing is, though, about this run, even though and this is kind of where my foot off the gas statement kind of relates to, is a lot of the teams they faced are below 500 teams, which on the positive side, of course, it shows that they're not playing down to their competition so much, but they haven't really had the toughest road. They only have 5 wins against 500 teams during the stretch, 2 of which those teams were at 500 going into that game. And then Dallas, Cleveland, and Portland are their only opponents during that stretch, which they played Dallas twice, their 2 most recent wins. But those 3 opponents are their only opponents that are currently above 500 during that stretch that they played. So it remains to be seen when their schedule gets a little tougher, how they'll fare. But as of right now, the team's rolling.
Yeah. This team looks really good. They've come a long way since the last time we kind of talked about them, which was not necessarily calling them out, but saying we might have been a little concerned just 1 week into the season. But to kind of go off of a point that you said, that they're blowing out the teams that they should be blowing out, and they're winning a lot of close contests to some of the tougher teams that they're playing, which I love to see because, like you said, they're not playing down to their opponents. They're going into every game with the mindset, we have to come in here and we have to do what we have to do to get a W. And what I love about Phoenix is they can win multiple ways, and they're doing it as a complete team. Wrote down that Chris Paul, he's the leader. You got Devin Booker, who's the scorer. You got DeAndre Ayton, who's the anchor. Kel Bridges, who's the kind of up-and-comer. Crowder's kind of the cleanup guy, and a talented and deep bench. They're looking to make another run at the finals. And so far they're showing with this run that they're on that they can do that. To me, the most telling part about this run and essentially the entirety of the Western Conference has kind of just been between those 2 so far. I know Utah's up there, but then there's a lot of teams that are right there around 500 that we're expecting, 3 or 4 of them to take off here at some point once they get some guys back from injuries. But it's most telling when you kind of look at the standings and you know how dominant the Warriors have been and dominated all the headlines. And then you look at the standings and see that the Suns are just 1 game back of them. Like you would expect a start with that the Warriors have had. They've already built maybe a 3-4 game lead on number two, but no, it's a one game. It's one night where the Warriors slip up and Phoenix gets another win, and it's a tie at the top of the Western Conference. And but it's a long season. But it's encouraging to see that it looks like they've picked off right where they left off, or picked up right where they left off. And they just look hungry, man. They look hungry to go out there. They're motivated by that loss. And I think one thing that was very telling, I don't know if you saw, but you've probably seen on social media, is after they lost, it was in game 6 to Milwaukee, and Devin Booker stayed on the court and watched the confetti fall and sat there. And he was just like, man, we let one slip by our fingers. And I don't think him and Chris Paul want to ever let one slip by their fingers again.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Chris Paul's clock essentially ticking, he's going to be more motivated than ever to get back to the finals. He said before the season that playing in the finals was addicting, and that
he got his first taste.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to never not be here ever again. So
exactly,
I think we're going to see a very motivated Suns team, provided that they're healthy. They're going to be there. I'd be shocked if they're not one of the teams in the Western Conference Finals. But it's still early. There's still a lot of teams out in the West that have a chance, in my mind. But the Suns, for me, are an early Western Conference Finals favorite.
Yeah, they're out there to prove that the West runs through them. But we'll have to see. And jumping from them to a team at the top of the Western Conference standings to a team at the bottom of the Western Conference standings, we got to go. We don't normally get breaking news on a Sunday, but since we're recording this here on a Sunday and this kind of came out, we got lucky. We have to cover that the Sacramento Kings have fired their head coach, Luke Walton, after a 6-11 start to the season. So, Jared, what do you make of this move? And is this the right time that they should have done this?
See, Luke Walton hasn't been a great coach for the Sacramento Kings. But I don't really know if it's so much Walton's fault as it is just the organizations in general. I mean, look at this organization. They have the second longest active playoff drought in North American sports, 15 years. They were last in the playoffs in 2006. I don't know what you were doing in 2006, but I believe I was like, in third grade?
Yeah, I was 9. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was learning how to write. Yeah. Which is what I hope to be doing for a career for the rest of my life to an extent. It's this organization is a dumpster fire. I mean, they're about to be on their 11th head coach since Rick Alderman, who led those Sacramento Kings teams in the early 2000s, left town after they didn't renew his contract at the end of the 2006 season.
Mm.
It's a mess. I mean, Alvin Gentry, I think he's a solid coach, but he's also been in situations like New Orleans where he wasn't able to carry it. Now he is in the interim. So it remains to be seen if he'll be promoted to full-time head coach or if they're going to look in a different direction. I just think this is one of the franchises where if they picked up out of Sacramento and moved to Seattle or Las Vegas tomorrow, it would be better for the franchise. Like, there's no market in Sacramento to attract free agents. They've never been able to do it. The stars that they do cultivate, like, they trade away or waste their potential or leave town. DeMarcus Cousins is the perfect example of it. And now they're probably wasting De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, prime boogie, man. To me, it seemed like Luke Walton had kind of lost the locker room. And then when it comes to being a head coach, that's the one thing you can't do. And it seems like when you start to get the eye rolls and no one's really buying into your rah-rah stories anymore, that's usually when we see these head coaches leave out the front door. And, we saw nothing special. They got out to a decent start. And then all of a sudden they've lost, I believe it's 7 of their last 8 games. And we saw, I believe it was about a week ago, Marvin Bagley not wanting to check into the game somewhere. I think it was in the middle of the third quarter. And just it's with the Kings. They've never been anything special as long as, in our lifetime, essentially. And I have to give props to the King organization because Walton has enough name recognition. And I think at this point I don't think he's a terrible coach. I just don't think he's a special coach. I think he's a good basketball coach. And I think he would do great as first or second assistant somewhere on a team that he can grab on. And I'm sure he will grab on somewhere. And I don't think in the head coaching ranks as of right now, but try to grab on, learn, and then maybe a couple seasons from now, maybe get some interviews and get another chance. But I don't know. It could be easy for the Kings just to let them kind of skate through this season. And I think they made what was the tougher choice in deciding to start over. I think Walton, he went 68 and 93 as the Kings head coach. They have some young talent. Marvin Bagley hasn't really become what a lot of people were hoping that he would become. Everybody likes De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, who looks like he's going to be a solid player. It'll be interesting to see who the new long-term solution is. I don't know if Gentry is going to be that long-term solution or if he's just kind of a stop fill here for the rest of the year. But I'm interested to see. Obviously, they'll be looking around at head coaching. I don't foresee any sort of like Hawk situation where this team just takes off under their interim coach like we saw with McMillan and Gentry becomes the solution for the next 2 to 3, 4 years. I don't foresee that happening. I foresee the Kings continuing to struggle all year, but everybody besides maybe the diehards in Sacramento probably saw the Kings were going to struggle this year. So I got to give some props to the organization because I feel like far too often you kind of you have a coach that you like as a person and who's not terrible. You kind of just let them just keep going, but you know that they're never going to take that next step forward.
Yeah. Well, I'd be impressed if Gentry, if they do choose to go in this direction, stays there for 3 years because no one has been in Sacramento longer than 3 years since 2006. I mean, 10 head coaches. I think Dave Yeager had the longest tenure since Rick Alderman.
Yeah.
And that was 290 something games, something like that.
Yeah. And now we want to move on to our newest segment here on the TM Up podcast. We're going to call it Buy or Sell. Probably seen it on a lot of other sports shows, but we're going to take it and steal it here. So the rules of the game are simple. We have some statements that I'm going to go ahead and list off. And Jarrett, you're going to tell me if you're buying or selling what I'm offering you. So without further ado, man, let's get into it. So Jarrett, are you buying or selling that the Golden State Warriors should be considered the title favorites right now?
I will throw my money down on the table. I will buy that. I think in my mind, the Warriors, they're top of the NBA right now, and they're not even at full power yet. Klay Thompson, who just got approved for full team practices.
That was big news.
He hasn't even touched the court yet, and it doesn't matter. The Warriors are still top of the NBA. They still have James Wiseman waiting in the wings. This team is not yet at its full potential. And personally, even though I was never a Warriors fan during their stretch, I was more of a Warriors hater. I'm excited to see the dynamic duo, the Splash Brothers, back on the court together to see what kind of damage they can do in this decade.
No, definitely. I'm agreeing with you. I am buying this as well, that the Warriors are the title favorites right now. That could change with a bad week and with other teams keep going with their great starts. Things could obviously switch around, but right now it's hard to argue with them. And especially they've set the tone defensively. They're the best defensive team in the league. No one can really argue with that. They're tremendous. Curry's looking like he's making another run in the MVP. I know he's been at the top of our power rankings and a lot of other power rankings around the league. So I think they've done enough. They've locked down defensively. They have enough young talent and enough talent that's going to be put into their rotation when guys like Klay Thompson and James Wiseman gets back, that I think they have to be considered the title favorites right now. So I'm with you on that one. So second one we have here, Jared, are you buying or selling that the Los Angeles Lakers are a playoff team?
Oh, I'm 100% buying. And here's why. One word, LeBron. Has LeBron ever not been in the playoff conversation during his career? Other than the the 2019 Lakers, but that was
if he's healthy,
yeah. So with LeBron, with the Lakers, I mean, he has Anthony Davis and he has some form of Russell Westbrook on the roster. That team it's too talented, despite their age and despite the chemistry struggles, to not at least make an 8th seed in the playoffs. I'm not worried about their playoff chances. What they do beyond the first round of the playoffs, though, I'm not too confident in.
No, I'm with you. I'm buying this one as well, that they are a playoff team. This was a tough one, but, the Lakers so far, they've been far from dominant. But the return to LeBron is huge, but not just, I think, for his play and what he actually gives them. But when LeBron is playing, he's their primary ball handler. And when he does that, it allows Russ to play off the ball and play as a slasher, which is when we've seen him at his best so far this season. It also allows Anthony Davis to play at that 5 spot, which is where we've seen him at his best so far this season. So I think when LeBron is in the lineup, it pushes everybody down a little bit. Everybody's got to handle the ball a little bit less. LeBron, obviously, he's done it his entire career. He's going to find open guys. They just have to knock down the shots. I think with the bench guys, Malik Monk has had a few big games. I think that could play dividends as being a key guy off the bench. Carmelo Anthony, we need him to keep doing what he's doing and hitting threes at the clip that he's hitting. So only at home, surprisingly, so far. He's only hitting threes at home, which is a very strange fact or stat if you ever look it up. But I agree with you. With LeBron, there's a lot of his teams, there's usually a feeling out process, but then they kick it into gear. And I'm going to trust in LeBron in this one. I think they are a playoff team as well. So, Jarrett, are you buying or selling that the Wizards will be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference?
I'm selling this. Now, the Wizards have played really great. They have surprised the hell out of me this early in the season. I love seeing the chemistry that this team has, despite all the parts they brought in. But I don't believe they'll be a top 4 seed. In my mind, there's a lot of teams sitting below them that are better than this team. I mean, they're technically the 2nd seed right now, but they're tied with the Chicago Bulls. That's one of the teams I think that's better. The Nets, who sit above the Wizards, are better. I think the Miami Heat, who the Wizards coincidentally just defeated, are still a better team. It was only a 3-point loss. It was a close game.
Yeah.
I still think the 76ers, when healthy, when they get Joel Embiid back, when they are just back to full strength after all their COVID woes go away, they're going to be a better team. And of course, the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks, once they finally get their roster back together, are going to be another team that's going to sit atop the Wizards when the standings are set for the playoffs.
Yeah, I thought you might surprise me on this one, but I'm selling this as well. You know, I think the Wizards are not going to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference when all is said and done. You know, they've been the biggest surprise of the season for many outside of the Warriors. But, you know, I think they're going to start to come down to earth, and I don't think it'll happen fast. I think it'll happen pretty slowly. You know, they'll drop some games. They feel like they should have won. But to me, this plays to exactly what you said. The talent of the Eastern Conference has continued to just get better. All those teams that you listed, as soon as they get their chemistry, they get guys healthy, they're playing good basketball. Once we get to the middle of this season, I think the Wizards are still a playoff team. I didn't think that at the beginning of the year, but I think they've proven enough that they're going to hang on there in the playoffs. I see them finishing somewhere in that 6-7 range somewhere, and you know, being a very tough matchup, I will say, for whoever they end up playing in the first round of the playoffs. So the fourth one we have here. So, Jared, are you buying or selling that the Suns have a good chance at returning to the finals?
I'm gonna buy that. I think the West is wide open this year, and even though I think Warriors are likely the title favorites right now, the Suns still, in my mind, have as good of a chance as anyone to make it back. I think it's going to be a Suns Warriors Western Conference Finals. I don't know what team's going to win that. If I had to put money on it right now, I would say the Warriors. But yeah, why not the Suns? They just did it last year. They have the same team as, for the most part, that is returning for this season, and they look pretty damn good right now. So I'll buy that.
Yeah, I'm buying this as well. You know, the Suns have proven over this run, 11 straight games is no easy task, and they're showing that they're, you know, up there. If not one, they're definitely 1B up there with the Warriors right now in the Western Conference. And the West just hasn't looked as good so far this year. I know we'll get to that here soon, but, you know, I think it's a good chance the Suns will have a chance to return to the finals. They have, you know, they got that taste. A lot of the guys on the rosters, especially the younger guys, have that taste of playing in the finals. You know, they lost to the Bucks. They even had, I think they were up 2-0, if I'm not mistaken, in the NBA Finals, and looked like they were going to close everything out until Giannis came storming back and decided that that was not going to happen. So I think the Suns have a very good chance at the possibility of returning to the finals, but only time will tell. Which right now, I mean, how great would a Warriors Suns Western Conference Finals look right now? I mean,
That'd
insane.
Be fun. The battle of the backcourts for sure.
Oh, for real. And the last one we have here in buy or sell. So, Jared, are you buying or selling that the Eastern Conference is now the tougher conference?
Well, I've invested a lot of money today into these topics, but I'm going to have to keep investing. I am buying that the Eastern Conference is the better conference in the NBA right now. And here's why. If you look at the Eastern Conference standings as of right now, the gap all the way to the 10th seed is 3 games.
Yeah.
3 games in the Eastern Conference. You can talk yourself into 11 of these teams having a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. And maybe if you're very, very confident in the Toronto Raptors, maybe a 12th team. Me, not so much in the Raptors, but this conference is deep. Another reason for it is they've attracted a lot of the talent that was in the West. I mean, you look at guys in the past couple of years like Durant, DeRozan, Harden, Holiday, Randall, all these guys are playing major roles on some of these teams that have risen from the cellars of the Eastern Conference over the last couple of years. And some of those teams are contenders. Like, look at the Nets and the Bulls. Yeah. The additions of Harden and Durant, and then DeRozan to the Bulls. Like, look at how these teams' fortunes have changed overnight. I mean, you're looking, I forget what coach said it, but I think it was Steve Nash was saying his team wasn't up there on par with the talent of the Chicago Bulls. You know how long it's been since I've heard the Chicago Bulls mentioned as an elite team?
Yeah.
And last year they're 11th? No, this conference is deep, and there's going to be some heartbroken fan bases out there at the end of the years because there is so many talented teams in this conference, but not everyone can make the 8 seeds.
No, I agree. I'm buying this as well. And I think this has been a long time coming that the Eastern Conference, the stronger conference. I mean, pretty much all of our fanhood of the NBA, it's always been the Western Conference. And people, even a big criticism of LeBron, as they were saying, well, you're doing it in the Eastern Conference, come over to the West and see what happens. And we're really starting to see that swing. I'm not going to get into it, but, at the same time, LeBron goes over to the West. Now everybody wants to leave the West, but that's a story for a different day. But, it's been widely, pretty much accepted. No one would really argue that the Western Conference was tougher than the Eastern for a long time now. But the rise of teams like the Nets, the Heat, the Bulls, the Wizards, the Bucks, it just gets deeper and deeper. And I think they're really setting themselves up, and they have a lot of young guys along with the veteran superstars that they're going to try to make a run at this for a long time. And I know all these teams in the East, they've been down and they starting to pick themselves up. They don't want to go back down there. They want to continue to compete, continue to try to get a championship. So I am buying that as well. But yeah, that's all we had for the buy and sell segment. So now we're going to move on to our favorite segment, our final segment we have here, and that's the Tee 'em Up segment of the Tee 'em Up podcast. So, Jarrett, who are you teeing up this week, my man?
I'm putting a technical foul on that Kings fan that was sitting on the sidelines of the Kings Jazz game. I'm assuming you.
Yep, I thought about that. I'm glad I didn't go with it, but I thought about that.
I have so many things to say about this. All right, obviously, this person's a very privileged person in life to where they can afford to sit sidelines of an NBA game, a spot that so many fans would love to have. Now, of course, when you're sitting in these seats, you got to be on your best behavior. You don't want to impact the game. You don't want to do something stupid that gets you thrown out. This man somehow, clearly he's sitting on the sidelines, has the wealth to get hammered at an NBA game. I mean, do you know how much a beer is at an NBA game?
Oh, yeah.
Let alone, I can't imagine any mixed drink. Oh,
wow.
Getting hammered on the sideline at an NBA game, throws up after heckling the opposing team all day, and he stops the game for like nearly 15 minutes while they try to clean him up and then kicked him out. You see a video of him walking to the tunnel ushered by security, and he's like hobbling over. The man can't even walk straight, which I have to say, go on Twitter and look at the threads from this. And somebody just posted all the reactions of the Jazz and Kings players, and it's great. Just listen to the interviews, and it's hilarious. But technical foul on that fan, like literally, you stopped an NBA game for essentially a whole quarter.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. And the one that I came up with, I was doing a little research because I didn't really have one. Normally, if I see one throughout the week, I'll like screenshot it and remember it and be like, hey, that's going to be my Tee 'em Up. This week I didn't have one. So this was a report that I saw that it wasn't widely reported. It didn't come through on like Bleacher Report or ESPN. I think it was NBC Philadelphia that reported this. So I'm teeing up Daryl Morey. And this is, you might not have heard this, but we've talked a lot about him this year and, given him a lot of compliments. But today, this report came out that he's not willing to engage the Detroit Pistons for trade talks unless Cade Cunningham is involved. That is the hard line that he drew with the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham has played like 6 games in his NBA career. 6 games. And don't get me wrong, I think he's talented. He was my pick for Rookie of the Year. But the Detroit Pistons are not going to give up their number 1 overall pick, who's played 6 games, who is showing talent and who can shoot a jump shot, for Ben Simmons. Like, they're not going to do that. I know the Detroit Pistons are a dysfunctional organization. If they make this move, they will be my Tee 'em Up for the next 3 months, because that would be the most ridiculous thing. But at this point, Daryl Morey, I have to tee him up. He has to understand the value he has. And although at this point, Ben Simmons, yes, he's a better player than Cade Cunningham. But the Detroit Pistons aren't kidding themselves. They're not trying to win anything. They're trying to find a diamond and get a superstar. They believe Cade Cunningham can become that player. The dude's played like a week and a half. Can we let him get his apartment first? Like, can we let him settle down a little bit, play basketball, play some minutes, before he's trying to be Daryl Morey's trying to go like, nope, don't get your apartment over there in Detroit because you're coming to Philadelphia. This is not going to happen. I have to tee up Daryl Morey on this one, man. Oh, so I take it you did not see that report.
I did not see that report. No, personally though, I think Daryl Morey is just asking basically what he can get for the best value for Ben Simmons. Yeah. And really the Pistons have nothing else of value unless you're a big Jeremy Grant guy.
At this point, I'd take Jeremy Grant. I'd take Jeremy Grant maybe 2 firsts and 2 seconds. 2 firsts and a second. I would if I'm Morey. I mean, what's Simmons giving you?
But I think in the Sixers side, they don't want to waste Embiid's prime. They're looking for a difference maker, which I know Morey said that he's like, we're not trading Simmons for a difference maker, which I think that's fair for the Sixers position because they're trying to contend now.
I agree. Well, that's all we have here for the Tee 'Em Up podcast. This was a good one. A lot of headlines going through. So we're going to go ahead and leave you guys. Be sure to join us next week for another edition of the Tee 'Em Up podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all over the place. So sure to give us a follow at Tee 'Em Up Podcast, and we'll be back to check out with you guys next week to break down what happened in this crazy league.
All right. Make sure to share us with all your friends and family.